The incident happened on the day I was away from home for one night to attend a memorial service at my parents' house. When I returned home after the memorial service, I heard someone crying inside. I got panicked and rushed in to find my grandson, Alex, sitting and crying alone in the middle of a hot room. "Where is your dad and mom?" I asked, and Alex told me while sobbing that they went somewhere with Emma. Alex is only 3 years old and can't go to the bathroom by himself. His small body was dirty, and seeing him in such a pitiful state, I couldn't help but hug him. Leaving their child alone for such a long time is practically a crime. By this point, I was already furious, but I decided to call my son, John, to ask what they were thinking. After a while, John finally answered the phone. "Hello? What's up? Is the memorial service over? Where are you right now?" "Oh, right now? I'm on a trip with Rachel and Emma. Since you weren't home, we thought we'd take some family time to relax." Unbelievably, John had left Alex alone and gone on a trip to a distant tourist spot. And the trip was for 4 days and 3 nights. This made me convinced. Neither John nor his wife Rachel have any sense of responsibility as Alex's parents. They're irresponsible, lacking any guilt for their actions, and that won't change. Hearing their carefree words, my anger finally reached its limit. I can't let myself be dragged around by my son's family any longer. To protect Alex, this shared living arrangement has to end. With that decision, I hung up the phone without a word. I decided to take care of everything before John and Rachel returned. A few days later, they must have been shocked when they got home. The locks had been changed, and they couldn't get inside. "Hey! The door won't open. What's going on?" My furious son and his wife called me, unaware of the further consequences they would face. My name is Linda. A few years ago, after losing my husband to illness, I lived alone for a while, but now I live with my son John, his wife Rachel, and my grandchildren Alex and Emma. Originally, I lived separately from my son's family, but half a year ago, John suddenly contacted me, saying he was worried about me living alone and suggested we live together. So they moved into my house in no time. Even when my husband was alive and after he passed away, they hardly visited or contacted me. So I had mixed feelings when John suddenly wanted to move in with his wife and kids. But I did have concerns about being alone, so I accepted the offer. John actually had been married before. I didn't have much chance to talk to her, but she was a beautiful and delicate woman. When John told me they divorced because she cheated, I was shocked. John ended up with custody of Alex, their son. Raising a child as a single father is tough, and I wasn't sure John, who isn't very dependable, could take care of Alex. But right after the divorce, he met Rachel, and they quickly remarried, which was a relief. Soon after, Emma was born, and now my son's family consists of 4, 3-year-old Alex and 1-year-old Emma. Both Alex and Emma are friendly and cheerful, calling me grandma and happily chatting with me whenever they can. Their pure, bright eyes as they talk are truly beautiful. Having these grandchildren has healed my lonely heart after losing my husband. They are precious to me, and I love them dearly. But now I have a major concern that I can't overlook. It's about John and Rachel's attitude towards Alex. As I mentioned earlier, Alex is John's child from his previous marriage and isn't biologically related to Rachel. Perhaps because of that, Rachel dotes on her own daughter, Emma, while being noticeably cold towards Alex. When Emma cries, she rushes to comfort her, but she ignores Alex and won't even make eye contact with him. I understand it's a difficult position for Rachel as a stepmother, so at first, I hoped time would heal things. However, no matter how long I waited, her attitude towards Alex didn't change, and there was no sign of improvement. In fact, recently, even John, who should be Alex's father, started favoring Emma just like Rachel. Now, I am the only one on Alex's side, and although he doesn't say it, it's clear he feels lonely. I know he sometimes looks enviously at Emma when John and Rachel dote on her. At 3 years old, he still wants his parents' attention, but they don't seem to care. He hasn't done anything wrong, yet he's being treated this way and must be at a loss as to what to do. But Alex never complains. Dad and Mom are busy taking care of Emma. He tries to act strong in front of me, Seeing this makes me feel incredibly frustrated and helpless. I have another issue with Rachel that bothers me. Rachel is a stay-at-home mom but doesn't help with any housework. She lives a lazy life, doing nothing all day. Cooking, cleaning, laundry. I do everything around the house while she watches TV or fiddles with her phone. She also leaves all the care of Alex to me and doesn't even take him to daycare. Despite being Alex's mother, she acts as if he doesn't exist. John, on the other hand, spoils Rachel and never says anything to her. As a result, Rachel's behavior has escalated, and she acts like she owns the place. I didn't want to become a troublesome mother-in-law, so I held back, but it has gone too far, and I finally lost my patience. When I tried to talk to Rachel, she justified herself by saying, whoever can do the housework should do it. I can't love Alex because he's not my own child, and you must be happy to take care of your cute grandson. The conversation ended in a stalemate, with no resolution. Since that discussion, my relationship with Rachel has worsened, and her attitude towards me and Alex has become even more hostile. She started hurling insults and sarcastic remarks at every opportunity, making life even more difficult for both me and Alex. When Alex cried, she would shout at him. "You should never have been born." Even if they're not biologically related, that's something no mother should say to a young child. I couldn't forgive Rachel and John for doing nothing about it, but I endured it for Alex's sake. That was until the day everything changed. One day, I had to leave for a one-night, two-day trip to attend a memorial service at my parents' house. When I told John about it, he just said, "Oh, okay," and went to bed. Rachel sarcastically told me to have a nice time while continuing to fiddle with her phone. I was worried about how they treated Alex, but I thought they wouldn't neglect him since I wasn't there. Take care of Alex and Emma. I told John and Rachel before leaving for my parents' house. Then the incident happened. After completing the memorial service and returning home, I heard someone crying inside. I got panicked and rushed in to find Alex sitting and crying alone in the middle of a hot room. "Where is your dad and mom?" I asked, and Alex told me while sobbing that they went somewhere with Emma. Looking at the table, I saw snacks and bread scattered around. It seemed like John and Rachel had left them, and Alex had been surviving on them. Since Alex can't prepare his own meals, these were the only things he could reach. It must have been tough for him to get through the day with just these. And at 3 years old, he can't go to the bathroom by himself. His small body was dirty, and seeing him in such a pitiful state, I couldn't help but hug him. After giving Alex a bath and cleaning him up, I quickly made a warm meal for him. Seeing the food, Alex looked very happy and started eating eagerly with a relieved expression. "It's delicious, thank you," he said with a smile, looking at me. Seeing Alex's reaction, I felt a sense of relief. "Take your time and eat slowly," I said gently, thinking about what to do next. First of all, what I know now is that John and Rachel have gone somewhere, leaving only Alex behind. The fact that Emma is not here means they took her with them. This means that leaving Alex behind was clearly intentional. I deeply regret underestimating the situation. Even though they usually treat him coldly, I never imagined they would leave their child alone for such a long time. This is practically a crime. Because of this, Alex might develop a trauma from being left alone in the future. John and Rachel probably haven't even considered that they might have inflicted a lifelong scar on Alex's heart. I left Alex in the living room after his meal, went into my room, closed the door so he couldn't hear, and locked it before calling John. I needed to understand what was going on. Why did they leave Alex alone? Where were they now? I was already furious, but I needed to know what they were thinking. When I called, the usual obnoxious ringtone blared. John's ringtone is a song by an artist I don't recognize. I always thought it was inappropriate for an adult, but in this situation, it only fueled my anger. After a while, John finally answered, sounding very annoyed. "Hello? What's up? Is the memorial service over already?" he asked nonchalantly. I tried to keep my voice steady and replied directly. "Yes, it ended a while ago and I came home." Alex was left alone and crying. John laughed and said, "Oh, really? He managed to stay home alone. I figured he'd be fine since we left some food." Glad you came back early. I couldn't understand how my own son could laugh and say such things. Alex was left in that state, and what if the memorial service had gone longer, and I returned later? A 3-year-old boy like Alex can hardly do anything by himself. Did they not realize what could happen to a child left alone for so long? He's not old enough to be left home alone. But rather than argue, I asked calmly what I most needed to know. I have a lot to say, but where are you guys right now? John then said something unbelievable. Oh, right now? I'm on a trip with Rachel and Emma. Since you weren't home, we thought we'd take some family time to relax. Incredibly, John had gone on a trip to a distant tourist spot. And the trip was for 4 days and 3 nights. Leaving Alex behind, they were enjoying their vacation. I could hear Rachel in the background saying, "Come on, let's go, I'm hungry." This made me convinced. Neither John nor Rachel have any sense of responsibility as parents to Alex. They are irresponsible, without guilt for their actions, and that won't change. Hearing John and Rachel's carefree words, my anger reached its peak. How could they abandon a crucial family member, especially such a young child like Alex? They hadn't even imagined how scared and lonely Alex must have felt being left alone. I won't let myself be dragged around by my son's family any longer. To protect Alex, this shared living arrangement must end. With that decision, I hung up the phone without a word. I decided to take care of everything before John and Rachel returned. First, the house. This house, filled with memories of living with my husband, is now being abused by John and Rachel. My late husband would never have wanted this. So, I decided to sell the house and no longer let them have their way. I immediately contacted a real estate agent to sell the house. When I told the agent that I wanted to sell the house, he was very surprised, but seeing my determination, he simply said, "Understood," and proceeded with the contract. However, selling a house takes time. It will take a while to find a buyer and complete the process. But I no longer wanted John and Rachel to set foot in this house. So, I had the locks changed. Now, John and Rachel cannot enter the house. I contacted my family and explained the situation, arranging to have all my belongings sent to my parents' house. I had no more business with this house. I decided to move back to my parents' house with Alex. When I told Alex we would go to my parents' house and live there from now on, he took my hand and came along without any fuss, simply saying, "Okay." Despite his young age, he must have sensed something and had his own feelings about being abandoned by his parents. But he said nothing about it and trusted me by staying by my side. I resolved that I would protect Alex from now on. It was at that moment that I reaffirmed my resolve. A few days passed quickly, and the day John and Rachel were to return arrived. I waited with my phone in hand. They would likely call soon. As expected, the phone rang shortly after. I saw the display and it was John. I deliberately let the phone vibrate for a while, watching it. John kept calling, not giving up. He would keep calling until I answered. I took a deep breath to calm myself and finally pressed the call button. As soon as I answered, John's voice was filled with anger. "Hey. The house keys won't work. What's going on?" Predictably, his reaction almost made me laugh. But I steadied myself and calmly told him that the locks had been changed and they could no longer enter. John, pushing back, said, "I don't get it. That's our house." But this house belonged to me and my late husband, not to John and Rachel. There was no point arguing now. So I continued, calmly stating what needed to be said. "The house is up for sale now. So, you and Rachel cannot enter. Also, leaving 3-year-old Alex alone at home is a crime. I'm going to report this to the police, so be prepared." Hearing the word police, John began to panic. He shouted that there was no need for that and that they hadn't done anything wrong. Rachel must have been listening to our conversation. I could hear her making a fuss in the background, but it didn't matter. Realizing they were only worried about themselves confirmed my decision was right. Ignoring John's pleas and Rachel's insults, I quietly hung up the phone. The phone continued to ring persistently, so I blocked their numbers and put the phone down. It was all over. They would face the consequences of their actions. As planned, I went to the police and reported John and Rachel. Not long after, John and Rachel were arrested for child abandonment. They denied the charges, but after police interrogation and questioning by the prosecutor, they were sentenced to prison. The last time I saw them in court, they looked completely worn out, with none of their previous energy. Life in prison would be tough, but I hoped they would reflect on their actions. The incident was covered in the news, and their faces were publicly shown, creating a buzz on talk shows. A year has passed since then. John and Rachel were released after 3 months, but the incident led to their divorce. They fought over who would get custody of Emma, but Rachel, as her mother, ultimately took her. John lost his job due to the incident and struggled to find new employment with a criminal record. He now barely makes a living as a part-time worker, burdened with a lot of debt from paying alimony. Life has been tough for him since then. This alimony isn't for Rachel. It's for John's ex-wife from his previous marriage. It turns out that the real reason for their divorce was John's infidelity. And the affair was with none other than Rachel. John started seeing Rachel while still married to his ex-wife, right after Alex was born. Apparently, John was quite the party-goer, attending mixers and other social gatherings behind his ex-wife's back. He continued his affair with Rachel, eventually getting her pregnant, which led to his ex-wife finding out and filing for divorce. Of course, John was required to pay alimony, and his income alone couldn't cover it. That's when he came up with the idea of moving in with me. By living with me, he wouldn't have to pay rent, and he likely planned to ask me for money if things got tough. Rachel easily agreed to this plan since it meant she wouldn't have to do housework. In other words, their move into my house wasn't out of concern for me but entirely for their own benefit. Their sudden change in behavior made sense once I understood this hidden agenda. I felt anger not just at being deceived by John but at my own naivety for allowing myself to be used. I had always known John's irresponsible nature, yet I accepted his proposal without question due to the loneliness I felt after losing my husband. Reflecting on my own choices, I sighed, realizing John was truly a lost cause. Everything John had done was coming back to him. It was his own fault. I hoped he would spend the rest of his life making amends for all the harm he caused. Meanwhile, Rachel, after taking Emma, lived with her parents but became depressed due to the public scrutiny from the incident. She isolated herself, living a listless life. Though I worried about Emma, Rachel's parents took care of her, so she is okay, for now. I hoped Emma wouldn't turn out like Rachel and would grow up to be a kind and strong person. Rachel was facing the consequences of her actions too. She would have to live with her guilt. As for Alex and me, we now live peacefully and happily at my parents' house. Of course, taking care of Alex is challenging, and my parents help, but there are still many difficulties. As Alex grows, he will eventually understand what happened to his parents. When that time comes, he will likely feel pain and sadness. He might never forget being left alone that day. But even so, I will continue to support him and help him overcome many challenges. Despite the hardship John and Rachel caused us, I want to create a future filled with joy to erase the dark past. Alex looks up to me like a mother, and he is growing up healthy and strong. His innocent words and actions often teach me things and help me grow as well. I never imagined raising another child at my age, but I am truly glad it's Alex. Although it was difficult living with my son's family, it allowed me to save Alex and be with him now, so it wasn't in vain. As long as Alex needs me, I will give him all the love I can, like a mother. I may not replace his real mother, but my love for him is just as strong. I hope Alex grows up to be someone who cares for others and doesn't become self-centered like John and Rachel. One day, while Alex and I were out for a walk, we saw an elderly couple walking their dog. Alex's face lit up at the sight of the dog, and when the couple encouraged him to pat it, he happily stroked the dog's head and talked to it. Seeing this, I felt reassured that Alex would grow up to be a kind and wonderful person. It was a scene that made me think so. After the incident, our bond as a family deepened. No matter what happens, Alex and I will be okay. As I thought this, Alex called out to me. For my dear grandson, I'll keep doing my best every day.